Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Communities Committee on the 1st of October. This is the hybrid meeting of the committee, and I'd like to remind all attendees that this meeting has been recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. And for any members of the public watching, please note that all of the committee reports for Angus Council are online, including the specific recommendations that we'll be discussing today. Elaine, have we got any apologies or substitutes?
Thanks, Convener. We have apologies for Councillor Cruikshank, Councillor Duff and Councillor Shepherd. Substitutes are Councillor Gregg, Councillor Durno and Councillor Clark. Councillor Durno, Councillor Proctor and Councillor Stewart are attending remotely.
Thanks, Elaine. Do we have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Councillor Melville.
Yes, thanks, Convener. A statement of transparency. Given some of the housing items on the agenda today, I should make reference to the fact that I'm a council tenant. However, I don't consider this to be a conflict of interest, and so I will therefore be staying in the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Melville. Councillor Nicholl.
Again, just for transparency, my children attend Letham Primary and Nursery, one of the schools we'll be discussing in item 5. However, I don't think this will impact me taking part in the discussion.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Just a statement of transparency. I have a close family member who is a teacher at Letham Primary School, but again, I don't feel that would be prevent me from discussing or taking part.
Okay, any further? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I should just declare as well, in terms of agenda item number 5, that I'm aware of some of the community feeling and feedback, in particular with regards to Muirfield Primary School exclusion zone. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Any further statements of transparency or declarations of interest? Right, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, just a statement of transparency on item number 5. I've had several conversations with members of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Okay, we move to number 4. I think, just to take it as granted, I think every member of the committee has had correspondence about the school-friendly zones. So whilst I appreciate people making statements of transparency, I think we can take it as read that the committee has had that. Okay, we move on to agenda item 4. I assume that's what you were asking for, Councillor Kitty. We move on to item 4, a request to speak. A request to speak has been received from Ms Kay Wales in relation to the school-friendly zone at Muirfield Primary from item 5. Ms Wales is requesting that the committee withdraw this zone. A request to speak has been received in relation to item 5, school-friendly zones in Angus Phase 2 and 3 update. Ms Wales has submitted a video presentation for members in relation to this item. Do members agree to the request?
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Can I ask that the video is presented?
And thank you for letting me speak this afternoon. My name is Kendra Wales, and I am delivering this deputation today on behalf of the group Action Against the Impact of the Hospital Field School Friendly Zone. We found out last week that the Council are recommending that elected members remove this zone. This deputation will support this recommendation. Sometimes you don't realise what you have until it is gone. And we really miss the old hospital field, where it was a safe environment, it was free from inequalities and discrimination, and it was peaceful. We really want it back. My job today is to give elected members an insight into the lived experience of how it feels for a community to have a friendly zone forced upon them by a council who are heavily biased towards it. We believe the council have used bullying and dirty tactics throughout the process. It has not been a level playing field when fighting against this zone. We have felt undermined, not listened to, and disempowered. There has been a complete lack of disability awareness and a trauma-informed approach. We have zero trust left in our council and understand why there is so much apathy towards them. We have already started the process of a formal complaint regarding the implementation of the zone and have no hesitation to take this to the Ombudsman if need be. We feel that that is the only way to ensure that what happened to us does not happen to anyone else. We feel the learning from this complaint would not only be regarding zones, but also in relation to anything else the Council implements. Angus Council values are collaboration, integrity, fairness, respect, focus on people, and putting people first. We have seen zero of these values from the Council at any point during this process. We did not offer up our community for a zone. It was taken from us. No residents at Hospital Field were invited to the first stakeholder meeting. People sat around a table, wielded their perceived power, and made a decision about what would happen on our doorstep without even asking us. We at School Road were told by letter this trial for a potentially permanent law was happening. Imagine the shock. Some residents are elderly and have lived in School Road since 1973, since Hospital Field was built. Hospital Field Road did not get a letter. A whole zone went in, a massive lamppost with signage and yellow lines with no pre-warning. Imagine the shock. There was no consultation with the parents either. This zone was thrust upon them as well. The council is dictating how parents get their kids to school and when they should take exercise. Getting children ready for school is a very challenging time of day anyway, and this made things extremely difficult for many parents. Imagine the shock. For the residents of School Road, the implications of this zone were very serious. We feel this project went wrong very early on at the planning stage, when the Equality Impact Assessment failed to identify that there would be a major detriment for those with protected characteristics. We believe that the Council has failed in their public sector equality duty. This is a statutory duty that required the Council to consider how their actions, so putting the zone in, may affect people with protected characteristics. This duty is part of the Equality Act 2010 and ensures that the public bodies eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimisation. The irony here is that our council actually introduced discrimination, harassment and victimisation into our Hospital Field community. The restrictions put on the residents of School Road were heartbreaking. None of these were mentioned clearly in the letter that we got from the council. What the letter said was, please bear in mind when scheduling visitors arriving in the street by vehicle. How can anyone schedule a surprise visitor? It's a surprise, so you don't know what's going to happen. The implications of that sentence I read out a second ago are far-reaching. And you will have read about a lot of them in the objections that were made for this zone. The most shocking one was when I needed to get a taxi from town to my home. This was 7 months after the start of the zone, so it was well hidden. This issue was well hidden. Residents cannot get a taxi to their own home during zone times and would need to get off at Hospital Field Road in busy zone times and walk round to their own property. It was shocking. We should have been fully informed of these types of implications in bold black writing in the initial letter. If someone woke up unwell in School Road in the morning, they would not be able to get a taxi to come and pick them up to take them to the doctor. They would have to walk to Hospital Field Road to pick the taxi up there. The past 16 months having this zone has been like drip torture. We feel that when 95 people objected to this zone back in March and indicated it was dangerous, it should have been withdrawn then. Likewise, when I emailed councillors and the Chief Exec in April and May, we feel this zone should have been withdrawn then. We are very angry about this and feel the council valued their experiment more than they did public safety and comfort. It can be seen that the markers do not support keeping the zone, and we are cognizant that there will be some people who would be disappointed. However, there are possibilities to improve the flow at the school within the school grounds, thus preventing some of the issues on School Road leading up to the school. To end on a positive note, there have been some heartwarming moments during this fight. I had 26 members of our community come to my home and post their objections. Most of them were elderly, and it was so nice they took the trouble. Furthermore, our community council has also been amazing and supports us 100% for removal of this zone. Our community has come together and fought. I believe we're a stronger community because of the zone. However, what happened to us and the stress and ill health it caused, we could all really have done without. So moving forward, we would really like to see a council in the future that embraces its values and uses these as a benchmark in everything they do. We hope that elected members will go with the recommendation from the council and vote to remove this zone. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Ms Wales. Now, I have here that you may be present to answer. Are you willing to answer any questions from members? Do you want to come to the chair there? It's also been suggested that Mr Dixon might want to... So, for the committee, this is Ms Wales and Mr Dixon. They have offered to answer questions based on the presentation made there. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Speed?
Sorry, just for clarity, is it just questions? Is it just...
It's just questions at this point of what we've just seen. I can't see any elected members with any questions. Nope. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next one. Well, thanks for coming up to the table there, and thank you for your deputation. You're more than free, obviously, to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to see how the next item is the item we're going to be discussing. just hang around for as long as you want. And if you want to leave at any time, anybody's welcome to do so as well, okay? Thank you. Right, thanks very much, everybody. Okay, we move on then to school-friendly zones, item 5. Is Graham online? Or who's presenting this?
Yes, it's myself, convener.
So this is school-friendly zones, item 5, and Graham Daly is going to introduce this report.
Thank you, convener, and good afternoon, everyone. This report provides an update on the progress to date and the determination of permanent traffic regulation orders for phases 2 and phase 3 of the school-friendly zones at 9 primary schools in Angus. The initial proposal for school-friendly zones was agreed upon in June 2021, which led to the rollout of the first phase at 3 schools. Following a successful trial, these zones were subsequently made permanent. As previously approved by this committee, the trial phases were implemented under experimental traffic regulation orders, restricting vehicular access during specific times of the day and only during school terms. In August 2022, this committee approved the rollout of phase 2, and in August 2023, phase 3 was agreed upon. The report before you today presents recommendations on whether to make the 9 zones permanent. The data gathered, along with objections and representations received for each school, are detailed in appendices 1 to 9 of the report. I would also like to highlight to the committee that stakeholder group meetings were held for each school, with local elected members invited to participate. After careful consideration, the recommendation is that 5 zones be made permanent and that 4 be discontinued. If agreed, this would bring the total number of school-friendly zones in Angus to 8. Their continued presence will enhance the safety, well-being and environment around our schools, and I would pay tribute to the school community and everyone that has been involved in progressing these to date.
Thank you, Graham. And what I would say is I'd like to thank all of the members of the public that have participated in their feedback on this. It's been really important in making these decisions, I guess, for all elected members in this chamber. Now, what I intend to do is go through each recommendation, offering questions and comments to the specific schools in those recommendations, and then we'll come back round to actually then going into whether we approve or refuse them, rather than opening it up so that we go from school to school to school. We'll keep it consistent. So we'll start off with recommendation 2, which is Andover Primary School in Brechin. Does anybody have any questions on Andover Primary School in Brechin? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. I have just a general question which would apply to every single one of these, if you're happy to take that. Mr. Daly, if these are approved, we've already seen a reduction and we no longer have dedicated dog wardens. We've seen a reduction in our enforcement officers, and they're incredibly tied to do the job that they're employed to do. If these are approved, how are these going to be enforced? Because the big question that I get from residents and that I've been asked by Councillor Cruikshank to highlight is the enforcement of these. To start with, while it was experimental, it was kind of there to sort of prove a point, and it kind of appears to have fallen by the wayside. So if these are approved, how are these actually going to be enforced? Because I can't see how that's possible, along with all the other enforcement action that our enforcement officers have to do. I just can't see it being possible. So can you explain to me and the rest of the committee and the public how these will be enforced?
Yes, certainly I'll try to do that. First of all, I would say we have the benefit of the fact to have 3 zones already being made permanent, and we have been running the trial for a number of months. In terms of how we enforce it, we do deploy our community wardens to the schools on occasion, and also we work with Police Scotland. In terms of enforcement action, it is actually Police Scotland because it relates to a moving vehicle violation, and our staff will go down in an advisory role, and we will raise matters with Police Scotland And I know that Police Scotland visited the schools, all of the schools on occasion. Now, we all have limited resources in order to do that, so we have to be realistic about how often we can visit. And there is an expectation that this becomes self-policing and the school community are respectful of the zone and the rules that are in place. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have shown or demonstrated through the 3 schools that are already made permanent and through the trial that that very much is possible, and it is successful in being respected, at these schools. Now, that's not to be complacent, and that's not to say there aren't issues, because there are issues and there are occasions where there's non-compliance. So we will continue to work with Police Scotland. We will continue to deploy our community wardens to visit the areas. So I appreciate is limited in terms of the resource we could apply to this. However, I think it can be said that it's been shown to work, and also that we will be able to at least work with Police Scotland, and between us still deploy a level of resource to try and continue the success at the zones that are made permanent.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Cowdery, is this in relation to Andover Primary School in Brecon, or a general?
This is going to be a question that applies to all the reports.
Crack on, Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. It's just the evaluation criteria. Obviously, the one at the beginning is a reduction in traffic congestion and speed around the school gates, as measured before and after traffic speeds. And then just a little bit below that on page, in this case 12, it says, unfortunately, traffic speeds were not taken before the implementation of any of the school-friendly zones. Obviously, that's quite a major hitch by the look of it. And I was just wondering why that was.
Convener, I'd like to invite my colleague, Mr. Andy Barnes, who has been involved in the project from the beginning, and hopefully Mr. Barnes can explain in terms of the survey work on that specific factor. I'll let you come in, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Afternoon, convener, members. Yes, sorry, regrettably, we weren't able to carry out speed traffic surveys before the implementation of the zones, but we did take traffic counts. This was due to, I think, just an oversight, really, and apologise for that.
Okay, any further general comments there, questions? Councillor Scott. Well, I think because we've opened it up, it's been more general. So in terms of if it's relating to Andover, that's fine. Right, so we'll get out of the way the general comments first and questions first, and then we'll go on to the specific schools. Is there anything else that people want to generally say? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost for words, especially after the presentation, and I just think it would be remiss to go on without making some reference to that, because it was very powerful, very alarming and very concerning. I feel quite appalled, actually. I just wonder, as we go through this, whether I'm aware that not all councillors are here, but I'm aware that there's councillors that have been on this committee that have been part of these plans and the works that have gone on, or hearing from the community a bit more than I have. But I just wondered, yeah, what we can do to rectify this. It's just been alarming to hear. Is there any way that we can approve the removal of the ones that are up for removal? Because I don't think we should be causing any more pain or agony, and then refer the rest to full council? No?
Councillor Speed, that would be inconsistent. We'd have to make the referral to full council for the whole paper, I would say, because then that would only be fair. It wouldn't be fair for us to say that the removal is done at this committee and we defer the other ones. That would have to be the whole paper. I would be inclined, from a personal point of view, and I'll seek advice on this, that we make the decisions today, as this is the Communities Committee, and every elected member gets the opportunity to read the papers and feed into their collective groups, which I've got a couple of submissions from Councillor Cheap, who used to be on this committee, and Councillor Bell, who wants me to make a comment on things. So my inclination would be, but it's in the standing orders, that it can be referred to full council after the decisions have been made, that we do that. But I think it would be inconsistent to do it if we only did one or the other. I defer to my legal colleagues, though, just for clarity. So yeah, just a few nods there to say. So if we can go through the papers and we can take it line by line, we've brought this paper forward to try and get these decisions made in the right way early. So these could have been, it could have been, if we'd based it on the original decisions, it would have been further down the road. So we're trying to get this decision made as quickly as we legally can possibly do. If we defer it, we'll have to go to the next council, full council, I would imagine. Again, I seek clarity on that.
And that's fine. And what I really want to avoid is prolonging this anymore, especially for the residents that are here today who've expressed their agony.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. So we'll move on then to Andover, and we'll go questions and comments on each item, because I'm conscious that this could take a lot of time. So if you've asked a question, you'll still get a comment, but questions and comments on Andover. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, it was just to say thank you for the presentation. I know that many in the Dromackley Park area have felt the same. I've been personally sent videos of dangerous manoeuvres, mounting the grassed area, because Dromackley Park in itself is very congested. So obviously the little road that goes up to Andover is the bit that's blocked. So it means that everybody are vying for spaces on Dromackley Park. It is essentially one lane, because all the other lane is taken up by parking. So I personally have seen and been sent multiple videos of cars going down the grassed area where kids are walking up to school. So that's really concerning. I've also seen videos of cars reversing round the corner because there's, it's met another car. It just, to be honest, the residents don't feel that they think they should be considered as stakeholders, and I would have to agree with that, because it's their lives that's being impacted. So yeah, I think there's a lot of disappointment, and I'm not sure that I see the benefit of continuing with Dromackley Park.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Any further comments on Andover? Okay, we move on then to Carlogie Primary in Carnoustie. Have we got anybody with any comments or questions about Carlogie Primary in Carnoustie? I've got a thing here from Councillor Cheap, and this reflects, I think, what Councillor Gregg said somewhat. This is Councillor Cheap's submission to me. I've spent each morning this week observing traffic movements on the approach to the low emission zone at Caesar Avenue and Carlogie School. In relation to the 2 or 3 minutes of each day, at least 15 cars with school kids in them ignored the flashing signs and drove on and either into the school grounds or parked up to drop their children off. Other cars parked out with the zone in nearby streets to drop their children off and are to be commended. However, persistent flouting of the restrictions by some are raising the hackles of those who do comply, and also residents in the zone are querying why this is not being more regularly policed. They are, of course, absolutely right. Having no recorded data that can prove the improvements in air quality, which was the whole purpose of the trial, I would caveat that in saying in some councillors' eyes, and I thought that was one for myself as well, is bad enough. But if it cannot be policed regularly, then why bother having it at all? Persistent cars flouting it will simply increase, and constituents will just see this as another waste of money that lacked purpose, as it couldn't be managed properly. So that was Councillor Cheap's submission for Carlogie. Does anybody else have any comments on Carlogie Primary in Carnoustie? No. Okay, we'll move on then to the next one, which is Lethem Primary. So any questions or comments on Lethem Primary? Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. So this is a comment really about the process of how we got to this point. Thank you very much for the deputation at the beginning, and it did highlight something that we found here and we managed, I think, to some extent to overcome, which was the lack of residents' input at an early stage. So this is my ward, and there was a residents' meeting that was called at an early stage in this zone, and understandably it was quite heated. And following that, changes were made to the length and extent of the school-friendly zone, which is there in the papers. And this was, in my opinion, so significant in what turned out to be a much less contentious, a much less difficult, and a relatively speaking, in my opinion, successful zone now. So it just goes to show that residents have such valuable input to put in, and it's a shame that it had to be slightly forced in that occasion, but it did get through in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. Any further comments on Lethem or questions on Lethem? Okay, then we move on to the next one. Sorry, Councillor Gregg. I thought you were indicating there. So yeah, we move on then to Liff Primary. Any questions or comments on Liff? Councillor Melville.
It's a comment, but if Councillor Whiteside has a question, I'm more than happy to put it first.
Comment.
Okay. This one is fairly straightforward for me. Councillor Whiteside and I attended the stakeholder meeting for LIF, and in that there was clear buy-in from both the head teacher and the community representative who was present, and that's reflected in the report, so I would agree with the recommendation to make it permanent.
Thank you, Councillor Melville. Councillor Whiteside.
Yeah, I don't have very much more to add. Having attended more than one of the stakeholder meetings, it's clear that the response is positive from the head teacher particularly.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Any others on that one? No, we move on then to South West Primary in Montrose. Any questions or comments on that one? Councillor Brace.
It's a comment. Just to say that all of these were experimental, and that's a crucial word in this. They were experimental traffic regulation orders. They were there to see how they worked and where they're working. Hopefully councillors will attenuation, and where they have failed, hopefully councillors will remove these traffic orders. And I think in the case of South West Primary School, it was clearly a bit of a failure. It was probably always going to be just because of the road network round about it. There were roads that people depend on, through roads, so that's the only comment I have to make on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Any further comments on Montrose there? Okay, then we get to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Stewart, apologies.
Thanks, Convener. I'm quite disappointed that South Esk is being earmarked to be removed. Looking at 4.6 of the report, it says that Angus Council works closely with Police Scotland when considering any possible changes to the road network. And I just would have thought that Police Scotland would highlight any potential issues that they felt at the time, especially with manpower, that would be required to enforce, and not just at this South Esk, but at every school in Angus. If I totally get that we want it to be self-policing, but where it's not self-policing, then we need to have some sort of intervention. And on page 50, we've got air quality. That's on Appendix 5. Air quality, where it says that the report was inconclusive. Can I ask on what grounds it was out? Why was it inconclusive? Why was the air quality not available? And then obviously it's just the same again for road traffic accidents. There's no information relating to that. And finally, then going down to 7.2, the report, it states that it's going to be approximately £1,000 to remove infrastructure, potentially 9,000 for everything. Can I just be reminded on the cost to implement this experiment in the first place, how much it was per school, if that makes sense? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. I'll leave it to Graham or Andy.
Yeah, I'll answer that in part. I may bring Andy in as well. In terms of, I think the first point was there around the air quality data, and also I think it was the traffic accident data. In terms of the air quality data, there was an issue with the recording mechanism for the air quality, and despite our best efforts in working with SEPA, unfortunately that was not able to be provided to us. We did make a call that, I think relating to what the convener said earlier, we do not want to delay this process any further in terms of bringing forward the recommendations. Therefore, we've brought forward the report without the detail on the air quality data. I would flag that it was one of several markers. We didn't put any weighting against what these markers would be. I think if you spoke to the head teachers, I would suggest, are the parents of these schools, I think a lot of it is around improving road safety. A lot of it is about the stress and anxiety that is often felt outside the schools. And these are schools where we're acting on, where we've had years, and it has been years, of issues outside these schools. And the reason we have implemented these experimental trials, and I would just reiterate what Councillor Bray said, these were experimental trials, hence the reason we're bringing forward some that we are recommended for making permanent, some we are not. I'll ask Andy to come in terms of the traffic accident data, but I'll just move on to the cost. Again, as detailed in the previous, it would be 3 reports that were put forward on phases 1, 2 and 3. The costs for installing were put into there, and from my memory, for phase 2, the total cost for the schools were 85,000, which I work out as in the region of 17,000 per school. I think I would just provisionally say that was the approximate figure from memory of the previous report. And as detailed in the report, we do identify that there would be a cost in terms of removing these. And again, I would just repeat, this was an experiment. We went in with the knowledge that some of these schools might not be made permanent, and that would be the implication. And I would just flag again, as I said in my introduction, if committee are minded to agree with the recommendations, we will still have 8 permanent school-friendly zones, which for years to come will address those issues I mentioned in terms of improving road safety, the stress, the anxiety that is caused outside our schools. I will bring in Andy in terms of, Andy, if you wouldn't mind just maybe advising on the availability of the traffic accident data.
Yes, thanks, Graham. Just to confirm, so there were no accidents either before or after any of the trials, so that's why the road traffic accident data is termed as inconclusive.
Councillor Stewart, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah. Yeah, going back to what I said at 4.6, obviously there's no potential issues highlighted at the time. You know, you would have thought Police Scotland might have come forward and said that they couldn't provide manpower to enforce any issues. It just seems that, you know, we're very good as a council at doing things, you know, at a great cost, and then it's, you know, obviously not worked out as we'd hoped. But okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Okay, any further comments on Montrose and South West Primary? Okay, then we move on then to questions and comments on Muirfield Primary. Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you. So this is the other school-friendly zone proposed in my ward, Arbroath, West Letham and Freakham. And I just want to put it in the context of what I just said about Letham. So Letham was in phase 2 and this one's in phase 3. So my comment, and it is a comment, is that we need to learn lessons, and we didn't learn them quickly enough, between Letham and Muirfield about how to engage with residents, because we had that, for want of a better description, kick-off in Letham, which resulted in improvements, and then we as a council seemingly did not take that lesson and appropriately apply it. I know there were oversights in terms of Arbroath Community Council not being invited to any except the last stakeholder meeting. I understand that was just an oversight, but we need to be so careful that doesn't happen again in any similar consultations about anything, because as we've heard, it can cause unnecessary and excessive agony for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Gregg.
Excuse me. Thank you, Convener. I have a comment from Councillor Cruikshanks, if you're happy to take that, with regards to Muirfields Primary School. After careful consideration of residents' feedback and officers' recommendations, I regrettably cannot support making the school-friendly zone around around Muirfield Primary School permanent. Whilst the zone's intentions were admirable, the evidence shows it has not achieved its desired impact on the active travel. We must encourage children's active travel, but not at the expense of local residents, some of whom felt it unduly restricted, particularly regarding visitors. Although this specific zone may conclude, I urge us to continue promoting active travel through more targeted approaches. Moving forward, I strongly advocate for the use of surveys to track our progress in this area. Let us learn from this experience in more effective ways to balance the needs for our school community and those of our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Clark, then Councillor Durnell.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, everybody. Once again, I'm substituting for Councillor Shepherd, and these are his words, which I'll be reading out today. First, let me say I regret I cannot make it in person today. However, Councillor Clark will be voting as advised by myself today for my ward. I would like to thank those who spoke to me when I visited the school-friendly zone in the heavy rain to see it in operation, including parents, school children, school patrol officer, and Gordon, now part of the residents group. I saw how busy the area was and many driveways were getting blocked. The community really did come together to express their discontent with the zone, and as one of your elected members, I have a responsibility to listen to how policies affect your community, your homes and your daily lives. The school-friendly zones have different outcomes in different areas, and that's only right. What works for one community will not necessarily work for another. In conclusion, thank you again to all those who have expressed their views, made their voices heard, and fought hard to protect the rights many felt that the zone infringed on. I beg your pardon. I also want to highlight parents must ensure children get to school safely and remain vigilant at all times. Road safety is such an important matter and must be passed down to all generations. I hope the community felt I have engaged with them constructively and we have reached the right outcome by not supporting the zone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Durno.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I just wanted to put this in context a wee bit. This started in 2021 when we weren't in administration. At that time, the Muirfield School wasn't quite complete, and on planning, we had actually asked for drop-off zones outside the school for the parents, so that if they have a baby, etc., they can park and drop off the 5-year-old, etc. And we thought that was going to work out okay, because obviously there've been problems before with School Road, with the entrance of the school, and obviously we're having the back entrance as well. We thought there's going to be plenty of room for parents to drop off children. And then this was implemented and the double yellow lines were put at the back of the school, which meant all the traffic was then sent to the front of the school. So really it's just turned into an absolute nightmare. And I do hope that when we're looking at planning from now on for new schools that we can implement. We know that you want people to give up the cars, but in reality, if you've got a baby in the car and it's asleep, you're not going to wake it up to take it out of the car to take a 5-year-old to school. So we have to think of parents. Parents are all having to work and they all have to drop off children and sometimes have to drop them off quickly. So as a grandparent and parent myself, I think we should take their views into consideration. And also, I want to thank Kendra for all the work that she's done at Hospital Field. She's done a fantastic job, and I'd just like to thank her for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durno. Councillor Nicholl.
I'd just like to say that though I commend the intentions of the school-friendly zone, I can't overlook the data and the impact that it's had on residents after the presentation that we had earlier and the impact that it's having on people. Though I just hope that the school can continue to encourage active travel and encourage kind of positive behaviour when it comes to road safety.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Any further questions and comments on Muirfield? No. Okay, then we'll move on to Maison Dieu Primary in Brechin. Do we have any questions and comments on that one? Councillor Scott.
Sorry. Thank you, Convener. Do you know, I was kind of torn on this one. I've been at the stakeholder meetings and I am still torn, to be honest. But I don't know. My daughter went to that school prior to COVID. So it used to concern me every single day. I used to run up if she wouldn't let me walk with her, I ran behind her to make sure she was safe because there was that many cars coming up and down that lane. However, which is St Andrew Street. However, since COVID, the zigzag lines were extended and it has hugely reduced the amount of available parking spaces and the amount of cars that are coming down. And during the stakeholder meetings, it was said that there isn't a large volume of cars using that because of the extension of the zigzag lines. There essentially is really nowhere to park. So in one respect, my concern was for that one is that the bus parks on Argyle Street and the children alight the bus and they come through the churchyard and they pop out of a hedge. So cars coming down couldn't see these kids coming out of the hedge. But the volume of traffic has greatly reduced, but the impact to the residents in the surrounding streets has obviously increased. And I personally know myself, I live quite near the school. If I arrive home from work at around about sort of 10 to 3, I can't get parked anywhere. And actually just last week I ended up driving round and round and round and round Brechin until I got parked, so until I could get a space. Yeah, I'm really torn, but I actually think probably the benefits outweigh the misery that it's causing in the other streets, and I just think it's, yeah, this again, I've had complaints about the residents there that they don't feel that they've been, they would have liked to have been stakeholders, so they don't feel that their views have been taken on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. And Councillor Beattie has said the similar thing from the residents' point of view about the stakeholder engagement and their views being heard as well. Any further comments on or questions on Mason Dew? Okay, we'll move on then to CV Primary in Monteith. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, Convener. Like others, I really applaud the intentions of these zones, and I think where they work, it's a really good thing. The geography of where schools are affects it greatly, and unfortunately this one is one of those where it hasn't worked out properly due to the location of the main entrance to the school. Having attended the stakeholder meetings as well, the head teacher supports the removal of this one, and I would agree with her on this. Thank you.
Councillor Melville.
Yeah, I just want to put on record that I second everything that Councillor Whiteside has just said.
Thank you, Councillor Melville. We got on to the final one in the list. Oh, sorry, Councillor Speed.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to seek clarity. Would I be able to speak out on behalf of Councillor Dorn, who sent a few words in? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for here, to get feedback from everyone. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you. So Councillor Dorn is supportive of the head teacher's feedback and views, where she's expressed concern over the consequences of introducing the zone prior to implementation, as the majority of the school catchment is in the east, and therefore those pupils arrive at the Victoria Street entrance and not Queen Street. The displacement of those vehicles from Queen Street to Victoria Street and others, including Alderley Terrace, has made the safety issues at the main school entrance worse, particularly with respect to unsociable and dangerous parking. There was a near miss in the school car park. It says today, but I think that was obviously the day that this was written, and a barrier to prevent access to the car park has been considered but was ruled out due to the installation being too costly and impractical to manage. It is understood the Parent Council may have similar concerns regarding road safety on Victoria Street and within the school car park. The head teacher supports removal of the measures to assist in removal of traffic from Victoria Street and the school car park not being safe.
Thank you, Councillor Speed.
Councillor Dorn's word, just to be clear.
Okay, so we move on then to New Tile. Oh, sorry, we move on to New Tile. Councillor Proctor, is yours related to Monteith or New Tile? It'll be New Tile, eh?
Sorry, yeah, New Tile.
All right, I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Proctor. I've got Councillor Bell's asked me to read this out, and we'll come to you to finish off. So yeah, Councillor Bell sent in about the New Tile School Friendly Zone. On behalf of New Tile residents, especially the members of the former Community Council, I'm supportive of the recommendation to withdraw the School Friendly Zone in New Tile, and I urge the committee members to support it. This issue has caused a huge tension in the community, and I've long advocated on their behalf. I'm also grateful to officers for coming to the same conclusion as we did. It wasn't an easy process for them. The process has raised issues over meaningful engagement, involvement in consultation, and the investment in front-end communications with communities prior to implementing new initiative changes or pilots. I wholly support protecting children from risk of harm by vehicles and pollution. However, this situation demonstrates that local knowledge about how pupils and parents access schools is invaluable and would have been ascertained earlier in the process. That said, I'm thankful that we've now reached the opportunity to undo the situation. Thanks for listening. So that's from Councillor Bell, and we move to Councillor Proctor.
Thanks very much, Convener. A lot of what Councillor Bell said there, and I'd just like to thank Mr Daly for actually coming round to explain the system to Newtown Community Council and the residents, and for the officer for rescinding this, because it's something that definitely caused a lot of upset and angst in Newtown. I just felt it was an experiment, as Councillor Brays alluded to earlier, and I think in the case of Newtown, it was quite a costly experiment, not just financially, but disruption to the local people and to the children. And I do feel it was something that, you know, a wee bit of consultation, listen to the local folk before we started, might have saved us a bit of time, trouble, and quite a bit of money. I think as a result of this, Newtown Community Council has kind of folded. Hopefully now that the decision that's been implemented has been rescinded, hopefully we'll get that back. So thank you very much to the council officers and for listening to the people.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. And the final reflection before we get to the recommendations is that, from myself, is that this is one of those policies that you sort of inherit over a council, but we can't take away from the fact that the Communities Committee of both the previous administration and the current one backed the school-friendly zones proposals and backed the way that they were done. So this is not a political football to play. This is literally one of those ones where the committee agreed a process. Now, I think the learnings that we will take as a committee is that the implementation process for these, nobody, I think, agrees with that going forward. In terms of just putting something in and then learning, I think you'd want to seek views first. And I'm sure most of the committee would probably agree that that's something we would seek to do going forward, certainly as a general rule. But that's just my thoughts on it. I think we want to move to recommendations. Councillor Gregg, do you want to come in the back of that?
Sorry, I wanted to make a comment, but generally over all of them, but if you wanted to take that.
If you very quickly, and we can get moved on.
Yeah, just generally, I think as an experiment, as it's been referred to, I think it's gone quite badly wrong in numerous places. Oversight of speed checks and issues with data monitoring for emissions and reading through pages and pages and pages of objections from the public. That, to me, doesn't sound like it's worked. I asked how these would be enforced, and the answer I was given was effectively, well, it'll be down to the police. But I know how stretched and overworked the police are, and they're already trying to enforce many other things without having to turn up twice a day to the various primary schools throughout Angus to support our own enforcement officers, which we have a few of as well now. When it comes to things like emissions, later on we're going to be talking about EV charging points, and there's a part in that says that by 2045, 100% of vehicles in Angus will be electric. So, well, that sort of gets rid of the emissions point of view of it going down, and obviously as time goes by, more and more of those electric cars are going to be around. When it comes to active travel, what happened to walking buses? Why did they stop? A lot of this is to do with, rather than having enforcement and you must do this, how about we educate people to maybe do things a bit differently rather than just a blanket enforcement? Because then people, when they don't agree with the enforcement and there's no enforcement taking place to prevent people from doing things, it's educating people, whether that's how they drive, what they do, or anything like that. That will make the biggest difference rather than just blanket, this is what you've got to do, and just expect people to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Speed, I'm looking to get to the recommendations if possible. I'll invite one last comment.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just be really quick, and I'm glad that councillors that are not here have been able to input as well. Apologies, because I didn't realise that was going to be the case. Hence my reason for just kind of trying to find out where, what the course of action could be in terms of referral to full council. However, it wasn't for suggesting for 1 minute what one should go and what ones couldn't, but in theory, could we have kind of had some going and some not. So thanks for allowing and explaining that. I guess I really just want to finish with saying that, I thoroughly support environmental improvements, the importance of safety, particularly around our schools, and I've seen firsthand, the challenges and the dangers that there are, especially with, such high volume of traffic. I've seen poor behaviours, dangerous driving, bad habits. I'm sure we've all seen that in and around our schools, and anything we can do to make our places and spaces safer, the better. However, I think what this report has shown is just that no two sites are the same. Different experiences, different views, different impacts, and it is really quite a complex situation. But I think what I really want to finish on saying is thank you again to Ms Wales, and I really do hope that we can take learning from this. I've worked with the roads team who do a tremendous job and have their work cut out, but I do think that there's lessons to be learned here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right, we're going to move to the recommendations now. We're going to take them one by one so that we can make it as clear as possible. The last Communities Committee lasted 7 minutes. This one, not quite so. So we move to recommendation 3.1. Do we agree to note the progress? Okay. 3.2. Do we approve making the permanent traffic regulation order in... start that again. 3.2. Approves the making of a permanent traffic regulation order in respect of the school-friendly zone at Ardover Primary School. Agreed. Do we need to go to a vote?
So you need to...
Okay. So as the convener, I'm moving this one. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Brace. Councillor Scott, are you proposing... Oh, we'll just get some legal advice. I'm just going to call a quick 5-minute recess just so we get our ducks in a row. Just to explain, and this is no disrespect, this is Elaine's first committee meeting as well, so we're all just learning here right now. So if we take a 5-minute recess, have we agreed with that? Yeah. And we'll just get this right. Stop the live stream.
Yes.
Everybody. Everybody's in their place, I see. Okay, so like we said before, we're going to go through the recommendations line by line. If there's universal approval, we'll just get approved. If there's contention, there'll be, I'll move it. I'll need a seconder. Whoever's opposing them moves the opposition, and then they'll need a seconder, and we'll go to a roll call vote on those things. So we'll do a little trial with Andover. Trial seems to be the word of the day. So I'm going to move the recommendation 2, and my seconder is Councillor Braze. I think Councillor Scott is saying that she's against the order. Yep. Does Councillor Scott have a seconder? Councillor Gregg. So we'll go to the vote.
Thank you. So the recommendation to approve the making of permanent the traffic regulation order in respect of schools friendly zone at Andover Primary School. The motion by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Braze. The amendment to not make permanent that zone by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Gregg, and I now take the vote. Councillor MacDonald.
Approve. The motion, sorry.
Councillor Braze.
Motion.
Councillor Cowsey.
Amendment.
Councillor Gregg.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine.
Amendment.
Councillor Durno.
Amendment.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Melville.
Motion.
Amendment.
Sorry, Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
Sorry, 5 for the motion, 11 for the amendment.
Okay, thanks everyone. We move on to recommendation 3. This is to approve the making of a perfect traffic regulation order in respect to the school-friendly zone at Carlogie Primary. Do we agree to approve the making of a permanent traffic regulation order for Carlogie Primary?
Agreed.
Councillor Gregg?
I'd like to put an amendment to refuse making it a permanent.
Okay, well, I put forward the motion. Councillor Brace to second. Councillor Ross Gregg, the amendment to refuse. Does Councillor Gregg have a seconder? Councillor Scott.
Okay, I'll go to the vote. So that's the recommendation to approve the making permanent of the traffic regulation order in respect of Carlogie Primary School, as proposed by Councillor MacDonald and seconded by Councillor Braze. And the recommendation to the amendment, to refuse the making permanent of that zone by Councillor Gregg and seconded by Councillor Scott. And now go to the vote. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Gregg.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Durno.
Motion.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Melville.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
And Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
That's 9 for the motion and 7 for the amendment, so the motion is carried.
As a local member, I appreciate that one. Thanks, everybody. We move on to recommendation 4, the approved making of permanent the traffic regulation order for Lethen Primary School. Do we all agree that, or is there an amendment?
Agreed.
Councillor Gregg?
I'll put forward an amendment to refuse. Thank you.
I'll allow it just now, Councillor Whiteside.
I just think we'll have to be careful in disregarding the views of the parent-teacher groups or the head teachers, because I think they're really best placed to comment on those.
Thanks, Councillor Whiteside. So we've got a seconder for Councillor Brace for the motion. Councillor Gregg has got a seconder. Was it Councillor Scott, or does Councillor Gregg have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Oh, Councillor Stewart is seconding Councillor Gregg. Okay, we'll go to the vote.
Okay, so this is for the approval of making a permanent traffic regulation order in respect of school-friendly zone at Lethen Primary School, as proposed by Councillor MacDonald and seconded by Councillor Brace. And then the amendment to refuse the making permanent of this traffic regulation order, as proposed by Councillor Gregg and seconded by Councillor Stewart. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor Brace.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdery.
Motion.
Councillor Gregg.
Amendment.
Motion. Motion.
Councillor Durno.
Motion.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Motion.
Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Melville.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Proctor.
Motion.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
14 for the motion and 2 for the amendment, so the motion is carried.
Okay, thanks everyone. We now move on to Liff Primary School. So this is the approval of the permanent traffic regulation order in respect of the school-friendly zone at Liff. Do we have agreement for this recommendation?
Agreed.
Councillor Gregg?
I'll just note my dissent to save the going through a great big vote.
Okay, so no motions against, no amendments against. So that's agreed for Liff. So we go to 6, approve the removal of experimental traffic regulation order in respect of the school-friendly zone at South Esk Primary School. So the motion from myself is to remove the experimental traffic regulation order. Do we have an amendment to that? Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment to keep the zone.
Okay, so my seconder is Councillor Brace for the motion, and Councillor Stewart, does Councillor Stewart have a seconder for his amendment? I'm not seeing any seconders for Councillor Stewart. So Councillor Stewart, since you don't have a seconder, we just have, that's one that's agreed. Agreed? Okay, we move on then to the next one, which is 7, approving the removal of the experimental traffic regulation order in respect of the additional school-friendly zone at Muirfield Primary School. Do we agree that? Agreed. Excellent. Okay, number 8, we move to approve the making of the permanent traffic regulation order in respect of Mason Dew Primary in Brechin. Are we agreed?
Oh, could I move an amendment, please?
Councillor Scott would like to move an amendment to not approve it. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Gregg. Go to the vote. Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Brace for the motion. Councillor Scott and Councillor Gregg for the...
I will just go straight to the vote. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor Brace.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy.
Amendment.
Councillor Gregg.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Durno.
Amendment.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Melville.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl.
Amendment.
Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Bede.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
And Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
That's 4 for the motion, 11 for the amendment, so the amendment is approved.
Okay, then we move on to the next one, which is number 9. It's to approve the removal of the experimental traffic regulation order for Seaview Primary in Montefieth. So my motion would be to remove the Seaview Primary School friendly zone. Do we have universal agreement for that? Okay, we move on then to 10, and that's the
Sorry, can I just check? Is the live stream back on? Did we put that back on?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're on YouTube, yeah. So we go back to 10. We approve the removal of the experimental traffic regulation order in Newtile. Are we all agreed? Ooh. Right, onto the agenda. So that is agenda item 5 completed. We move on to agenda item 6, which is the Housing Services Performance and Improvement Update Annual Assurance Statement. Alison, are you leading on this one? We'll just give it a couple of minutes whilst there. Okay, so we move on then to item 6, introduced by Alison.
Thank you, Convener. This report presents the first update on performance and housing following the approval of the Housing Improvement Plan in June 2024. It demonstrates actions that have been taken in areas to improve performance where required and the work of the delivery groups, which has been significant in terms of supporting improvement. It also seeks to provide assurance to members that the Council is fulfilling its statutory duties and seeks approval for the annual assurance statement to the housing regulator. There are a number of officers, both here in the chamber and online, able to help with questions in relation to this report.
Thank you, Alison. I open it up then to questions. Does anybody have a question? Councillor Nicholl.
Okay, I have a question regarding page 159, former tenant arrears written off at year end. Sorry.
Apologies, I didn't pick that up. Apologies. 159. Okay.
Sorry, I have a question regarding page 159, former tenant arrears written off at year end. I just find that reading this is quite a concerning percentage. What's it, 51%? So I was wondering if you're able to give us an idea of the actual number of former tenants this percentage represents, as well as the total cost of these arrears?
We don't have that information with us at the moment, but I can certainly get that to you after the meeting.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Similarly, on page 159, 2.1, the customer excellence. In 22-23, I think by looking at those percentage figures, I think generally that to me looks quite good, especially when you look at percentage of satisfaction being kept informed about services and decisions. That's at 94.2%. I think that's pretty outstanding. However, literally just a year slightly later, that's dropped all the way down to 64.7%. That theme is consistent throughout all of that table, where we were literally a year ago sitting quite high and doing well in many things, to then a year later there's a significant drop in quite a few of those. So what is the reason for that? Normally that's the sort of thing you'd expect over a period of time, but in a year that's pretty drastic.
Yeah, so the tenant satisfaction survey results for 22-23 were in fact from a tenant satisfaction survey that was completed in 2020. So we have to repeat that satisfaction survey every 3 years. So that satisfaction is likely to have declined over a period of time, and it's not the 2022-23 results are not reflective of a survey that was completed at that time. It's just that it wasn't repeated until the tail end of last year.
I guess to bookend that though, is there an explanation as to why that's dropped? Do we know any more information as to the reasons to why there's such a significant drop?
Yeah. So the key reasons for the decline in satisfaction were around communication and engagement with tenants and repairs and maintenance. They were the two kind of key themes coming out of the tenant satisfaction survey, and fed into the development of the improvement plan, and the two kind of key priority areas around quality of housing in place and customer excellence.
Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. Again, on page 159, and again, just what Councillor Gregg said, you know, the table looks in generally most disappointing. However, my sort of question is, we're talking about rent written off, where we had in 22-23, 32.9%. We're now up to 51.7%, which is, you know, against the Scottish national average of 22.36. Is there a sort of reason for that we, you know, failure to sort of get the bring these rents back in, or we've got to write the rents off? Is there a sort of underlying reason for that? And if one of the officers can answer that.
Yeah, I'll try and answer that. We'll come back with the hours to write-offs, but we've obviously had an eviction ban in place since 2000, and we have seen a lot of tenancies, you know, ending with high levels of rent arrears where we haven't been able to take action during. First of all, there was the eviction ban through COVID, and then through the cost of living crisis, we were unable to take action against some tenancies. And during that period, we have seen a sharp increase in rent arrears. And then when tenancies have ended through various different reasons, it's then gone to the write-off period.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, page 160, it's regarding antisocial behaviour cases reported in the last year, which were resolved. 89%. That's what it's saying, 89%. When I've asked this question in the past, we've had figures up to, from memory, 100%. And my understanding of it is, if the people involved in antisocial behaviour, if they're not engaging or there is no further communication regarding it, then it's put down as being resolved. And speaking to my constituents, I don't find that that is the case, that these things are resolved. And then moving on to page 161, the following page, the average time in days taken to relet all properties, 62 days. Well, I have a property not too far from where I stay, and I know that it's been empty since, I would say, at least April. And there are, various other properties in the town that has been vacant since that time as well. So I'm just not quite sure where these figures come from. If someone could possibly enlighten us on why we're getting 62 days when there's clearly longer times for properties. And also, can we also have an up-to-date thing on how many voids we've got in Angus, please?
Yeah, I can answer the antisocial behaviour query that you had. So an antisocial behaviour case is considered resolved when there's not been any further complaints for a period of 6 months. So if there had been a further complaint made within that period, it wouldn't have been closed as resolved. In terms of the voids, that's an average figure. So there will be voids that are that go on for much longer than 62 days, but that was the average figure for last year.
I can give you the current number of voids at the moment, and the current number is sitting at 352. I can break it down for you in terms of 150 of those are currently not fit to let. 73 are currently subject to an insurance claim. 38 are new voids that have just come in. 17 are awaiting modernisation or improvement work. We have 13 that were dispersed accommodation. We have 11 that the property is sitting just on the void status code. We have 8 that are awaiting conversion. 8 that are currently awaiting works because they're unsafe. 6 awaiting redevelopment, 5 that were currently just about to go to CBL. We've got some properties held for decant, which are around 4, and there's some sitting waiting to be considered for sale by the housing strategy team. I think that's 5, and under repair for a major routine item is 1, and another just 1 void straggling on its own. I don't know why it's sitting not in a different group of 1 property at the moment. So that's the current breakdown, but 352 altogether.
Councillor Stewart, can I ask you to come back in comments and we'll just get the questions out the way just now, if that's okay. Councillor Scott. Sorry, I thought you had your hand up. Councillor Nichols already had the question, so if we could move on, we'll catch it in the comments, potentially, if you phrase it right. Any other questions? Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. It's in relation to the compliance with the unsuitable accommodation order and the review of the temporary accommodation provision. I just wondered why this review hasn't been carried out earlier to help prevent breaches in the legislation, and also what was being done to address some of the information and advice that's given out to people that present as homeless, who are often told, turned away and told that the council have no stock, they can't help them, when actually there is that duty of providing temporary accommodation.
In terms of why it's not been done previously, it's just that I suppose we did the transfer of the staff last year and the team, and it just wasn't the right time, and now we've got together with the improvement plan, we've taken that time to look at that temporary accommodation review. It probably should have been done a lot before now, because we haven't changed actually our temporary accommodation stock levels for a number of years, so that review is done. It has actually been completed. It's sitting, I got it sent to me yesterday for review, so I do have that there. In terms of our compliance against the unsuitable accommodation order, we are doing our very best to move people on from bed and breakfast. We've done a lot of work with Angus, with the Health and Social Care Partnership, and a lot of joint working since August in terms of the number of people who have been in bed and breakfast placements, and to try and get a process in place so that they are moving them on to another alternative temporary accommodation as quickly as they can, rather than allowing them to remain in accommodation. I talked to the regulator actually about our compliance around that. and they are taking quite a relaxed view in terms of breaching unsuitable accommodation, because they'd rather we breach unsuitable accommodation at the moment than not provide any accommodation at all, and our numbers are still quite low in terms of some other local authorities. In terms of the information and advice that is being provided at the moment, I would have to speak to the Health and Social Care Partnership just to see what advice they are providing, but I can do that at our next update meeting.
Yeah, and just to confirm as well, I don't think this is necessarily just coming from the homelessness team. It sometimes can be the first point of contact, which can be, you know, a number of teams and agencies involved. So I wouldn't want the...
That first point of contact and where a person contacts, and if they get the wrong information at that first point of contact, how difficult it can be for them and challenging it can be for them. So it's one of the things that we're looking at in terms of the customer service group, and also in terms of our service review, as we start to look at how we, you know, have that front-facing interaction with customers, along with the corporate review in terms of customer excellence.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Councillor Fotheringham.
Thank you, Convener. Could the officers tell us why we've got so many properties that they consider they're not fit for habitation? What's the reason?
So the code for not fit to let is that they're sitting waiting for repair by our contractors.
Okay, any further questions for officers? Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Convener. I wonder if you could just explain to me the percentage of lets to homeless households is reduced, and what you'll be doing with regards to that. Thank you.
So the percentage of allocations to homeless households reduced in the previous year as a result to as the response to Storm Babette. So the people who were impacted by the storm weren't asked or weren't expected to apply as homeless. They were given special discretion for a move, which then impacted on the number of lets that we were able to make overall and then make to homelessness. There is a need for us to review our allocations policy. We identified that we weren't, through our existing policy, we're not able to make as high a proportion of lets to homeless households as we would like to, or as we need to meet our statutory duties. So that is why we've, which led to us to review the policy and the priority bandings, which we're discussing today.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, we move on into comments. Any comments? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, Convener. And as some of you will know, I've taken over as spokesperson for housing. There's obviously a whole lot of work to do, but I just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work that Councillor Braze has put into this. Obviously, when there's problems and issues to resolve, the first stage is acknowledging them and recognising them, and that's clearly been done. And it's also good to see some of the progress that has been made and some of the improvements, as you know, as well as the issues that we've got. So just wanted to say I look forward to working with the housing team going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, going back to the 352 voids, we do have a house in emergency declared here in Angus, and the percentage of rent loss, it says, is 1.65%. So for me, these figures just don't appear to add up. 1.65% for 352 voids doesn't seem very much. And also it says that we're told 8 days for non-emergency housing repairs, yet we're being obviously told that a lot of these voids are due to needing repairs done on them. So I'm just not quite sure why it says 8 days for repairs. That's the average. But so it's a comment. I suppose
we'll allow it, Councillor Stewart.
Well, we did ask the question, but you cut me off.
Okay, so in terms of the 8 days, that's for unplanned repairs, so that's change of tenancy repairs, which the Fit to Let code sits under. And also the difference in the rent loss is because a number of those voids are exempt from reporting purposes, so we don't have to record them all in terms of void rent loss.
Okay, any further comments from the committee? Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I do feel that there's still a lot, like Councillor Stewart has said, that there is a lot that doesn't seem to add up, and I think it is going to be really important that we continue to keep a close eye on things and hopefully improvements. But I can't help but feel that more of could have been done at an earlier stage to tackle some of this. And I'd really just want to again put on record for saying that the pathway for individuals and families who are homeless is very traumatic, often very traumatic at the moment. And there's no doubt about it that there is a shortage of stock, which compounds matters. But we need to ensure that the correct advice is given out to try and do what we can at the earliest possible opportunity to give them a safe space and roof over their head. So yeah, I just want to put that on record.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Durno.
Yeah, I've just got the committee know, convener, that Scotland Excel has just put out the new list of contractors for repairs and new house builders that have come on the list. So if any of the councillors would like me to send that to them, I've got that filed. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Durno. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, just with regards to the installation of the LD2 compliant fire alarms, I'm pleased to see that you've got a contract in place, because I actually did ask that last time and I was told that it would be resolved in the last year. So yeah, a bit disappointed to see it there, but delighted to see that you've got contracts in place and it will be resolved within the next 1 to 3 months. With regards to Councillor Stewart and the rent loss, so if there's properties that are not included in the report I think I would be keen to see what the actual rent loss figure is, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Scott, and we'll get that noted. Any further comments on this one? Okay, right, we'll move to the recommendations then. Okay, so the recommendations is this report 1 to 5. We note the Council's performance, we agree the evidence, we approve the draft annual assurance statement, note the social housing charter, and we note the progress made in the delivery of the housing service improvement plan. Do we agree all the recommendations? Thanks, everyone. Okay, we move then to the next item, which is the Housing Revenue Account Capital Plan 23 to 28. It's going to be introduced by Alison again.
Thank you. So this report, which is prepared jointly by the Interim Service Leader for Housing, Claire Greenhill, and the Team Leader for Finance, sets out the Housing Revenue Account Capital Plan, includes the 24 to 25 capital monitoring budget, and for noting also includes the 25 to 26, 27 to 28 capital plan.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Any questions? Councillor Melville.
Thank you, convener. I refer to page 181, which comments on the slippage in the new build programme. I was quite concerned to read that there's slippage at the Invertay House project in Monifieth. And so I just wondered if you could give me some extra context on that. Is that to do with construction inflation nationwide, or are there local challenges? And how does that affect the overall timescale for delivering these homes?
Okay, I think there's a couple of factors in there. I don't know, Claire, if you want to take that in.
Yeah, no bother. Gavin, I think Gavin's on the call and I'll speak on his behalf and you can come in if he needs to, but there's been a resource issue in terms of trying to recruit a QS for that post. They've been out to advert a number of times and been unsuccessful, but they've now gone external to recruit an external QS, so that's why it's now back on track, but that's been what's resulted in the delay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Do you want to come in with the comments, Lloyd?
No, it's just that there were aspects of my question which haven't yet been answered.
Sorry, I'd be happy in terms of the inclusion of that project within our T-Cities work. We have a bespoke housing project. So Ewan is on the call and Ewan's leading on that project now. That is part of the project. We're just working on the scope of that at the moment to ensure that we can keep up the pace on that one and take forward the business cases. So it is contained within that T-Cities project.
And just the final part of my question was about the delivery timescale for the homes.
So would you be on due to hopefully start on site July, August 2026? 2025, sorry. Sorry.
Apologies, Lloyd, for missing that there. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, it's on page 181. the aids and adaptions, can we get an update on the occupational therapist situation? That has been a problem in the past, where people requiring to obviously be assessed have experienced great delays in getting obviously assessed for any improvements that would require under the aids and adaptions. And also on the following page, 5.4.6, internal upgrades. Can we just clarify that there is a contract taking place just now? As I see that there's a new one due to be let in 2025-26. The one that is in place just now, is that actually happening, and is there bathrooms and kitchens being replaced in the Montrose and Brechin area as we speak? Thank you.
I think Gavin's going to come in and pick up those points. Gavin, yeah?
Yeah, I'll address the second question first, if that's okay. So, yeah, Councillor Stewart, we do have a bathroom contract that is live at the moment in Montrose Brechin area. As we've said there in the comments, there have been issues with the contractor resource issues. So the actual, the flow of houses getting completed hasn't been great, but we are working on that. So yes, there is a contract in place, but there will be a second contract, as you'd quite rightly noted, coming up in 25-26. In terms of the aids and adaptations, I can't really comment on the availability of the occupational therapists. We certainly deliver all the requests that come through. That might be a question for the Health and Social Care Partnership, who probably will not be on this call unless anyone else in the team
Claire can pick that one up. Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to Alison Taylor, the team manager from OT yesterday. So they currently have 281 people awaiting an OT assessment across the whole of Angus, not just for housing, that's across all their teams. The oldest waiting time is the end of May this year. They do have OTs off at the current time in both the north and the south of their service, and it is impacting on service delivery at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
I was just going to say, just in terms of the total number of days taken to complete adaptations for us at the moment is averaging at 41 days, which is an improvement from the end of last year's figure.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I just wondered if could get an update on how many open market acquisitions purchases there have been since the approval to increase that to 50 per year, and also if you were able to provide an update on the St Thomas site that is earmarked for development, because that obviously would go a long way in meeting the unmet housing need in Arbroath.
So in terms of open market acquisitions, we're not due, as when the SHIP was reviewed with our funding and the reduction in the affordable housing grant, the decision was made that we wouldn't have any more market acquisitions at the current time. We do have one that we are currently funding at the moment, which is for a homeless household who were displaced by the flooding, and we have that going through at the moment, but that is without any grant subsidy going against it. That's the only one that we have currently going through at the moment. Can you repeat your second question? Sorry.
Yeah, the other question was regards to the St Thomas site that was earmarked for development. Obviously, I'm aware that had been pushed further down the line. However, it's still of great concern, unmet needs, and is still of significant importance in our plans.
It is one of the ones that has been pushed again with the reduction in allocation. The SHIP had to be revised in terms of what we could fully achieve on the funding and for future years, and we'll be bringing the updated SHIP to committee next month.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, we move to comments. Councillor Brace.
Yeah, just a brief comment. Slippage isn't a good thing. You know, we set out what we want to do as councillors, what we want our service to do, what we want them to deliver. And if there's slippage, then it's a sort of diminution of the quality of life improvements that we're hoping the housing, better kitchens, better bathrooms, etc., is going to bring to them. So it's not a good thing. But the fact of the matter is that there's a huge competition for what resources out there. You know, it's really difficult getting folk to do stuff. We've had great difficulty recruiting the QSs we wanted, quantity surveyors, but we've got them now. And the same, I suppose, in OT, there's been big issues there. And getting contractors, well, we can get contractors, but if they can't get staff to come and work for them, and that's been a large part of the problem that we've faced, and this is all resulting in slippage. But we have to get over that, and hopefully we'll have better housing contracts coming forward. Thanks.
Okay, any further comments? Councillor Speed.
Just very quickly, happy to wait and have the answer off call, but just in terms of a follow-up to my question around open market acquisitions, I'm not quite understanding how we've gone from approving up to 50 purchases to then none at all. So yeah, if I could get an explanation on that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, we move to the recommendations. The recommendations are 1 to 4. It's to note the position of the HRA, approve the contents of the updated HRA, note the capital plan, and note the provisional budget. Are we happy to happy to approve recommendations 1 to 4? Okay, great. We move on then to the revised common allocation policy. It's agenda item 8, and Alison's going to introduce the report.
Thank you. So this report brings forward proposals to update the Housing Common Allocations Policy. This has been informed by legislation, policy development, statutory guidance, and has been subject to tenant and stakeholder engagement. This report was also the subject of recent member briefing, and staff are here today again to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Any questions for the team on this one? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I think it'll be no surprise to Alison, Claire and Lindsay that I have a number of questions, a number of them that I submitted before today that I've not had answers to. I probably don't know where to start because I do have that many questions. But yeah, I perhaps can wait and come on to comments. But yeah, for me, I've raised issues around choice-based letting and the allocation policy since 2007. Have had questions and concerns throughout, was very reluctant to agree back in 2007 and since its implementation during the pandemic. But I mean, there's that much questions that I'll just pick one out if that's okay, convener. As I say, I have tried to submit and get questions before now, so that I wasn't taking up a lot of time. But yeah, if choice-based letting was supposed to reduce administration, how can that be the case when we have nearly 3 times the number of applications that need to be verified and references requested? We have an increased use of AutoBid, which really actually reflects like the old system and how things were managed. And how will the allocation policy protect accessible accommodation for medical cases who already have suffered long wait times and poor access to meet their most basic needs?
Just so the committee is aware, and if you could answer the question, that would be great. We're approving the revisions to the allocations policy, not the choice-based letting system. So we've just got to make sure we're on relevancy here, and that's for everybody on the committee, just to make sure we're actually asking questions about this report, and it's the revisions as detailed in Appendix 1 that we're specifically looking at. But if the team could respond to that one, but I just want to bear in mind that the questions around the choice-based letting system, I think, are for another meeting, not for this particular paper.
Councillor Speed, could you repeat your first question? And just to say, we did receive your questions yesterday, and Lindsay and our team have been working through them today. Unfortunately, an officer was off yesterday, and we will have them back to you today.
Yeah, so obviously originally choice-based letting choice-based, sorry, I'll start again. Originally, choice-based letting and the allocation policy was initially agreed back in 2017. And one of the purposes was that it was going to reduce administration. And I'm just wondering how can this be the case when we have nearly 3 times the number of applications, and all those applications need to be verified and reference checked, and that whole process takes up a considerable amount of time, which does tie in with the allocation policy as well. And also we have an increase in auto bid, which reflects the old system. And my final kind of part of that question was, how will the new proposed allocation policy protect accessible accommodation for medical cases who already suffer with long wait times and poor access to meet their most basic needs?
Thanks, Councillor Speed. So in terms of the administration of applications, before choice-based lettings and the online application was introduced, our CHR team, our home finder team as they're known now, had to enter every single application into the system, which took up a huge amount of time. So now they need to do the verification checks of the application process, and they don't need to enter all the information into the system. So that saves a considerable amount of time for them. There's also time saved in terms of shortlisting, because restrictions are placed against properties when they're advertised. So when a property is advertised and the shortlisting takes place afterwards, the shortlist is almost already there because we've already restricted against the property before it's advertised. And so the shortlist that's drawn up should be, ranked in priority order, and the person at the top should be the one that gets the property, unless there's circumstances that means they need to be bypassed. In terms of the accessible housing, so we've introduced more guidance within the reviewed policy in terms of using restrictions and ensuring that they are used where possible, where we've got a property that's accessible, ground floor, or would meet a particular need. Properties with adaptations will continue to be matched to people who need adapted housing. So anything that's considered adapted will continue to be matched to people who need it. But if there's properties with a ground floor access, level access, or maybe a level access shower that's not more fully adapted, restrictions will be used. So only people that need that type of housing can bid on that type of housing. We've produced more guidance on that for officers. There was a bit of learning that we had to do there from the introduction of the first policy. Second question. The increase in auto bid. So there are people who are on auto bid, and it is important that we have that for people who can't bid themselves. However, there's not a huge amount of people on auto bid. We do want to promote as much choice for people as possible. We don't want to put people on auto bid if they don't want to be on it. However, if they do want to be on it or can't access advertisements, it's important that they have that option. I do have figures on the number of people who are on auto bid, because we did pull that for you, but I've not got that right in front of me at the moment. But there's somebody on the call who might be able to give a breakdown of the current auto bid applications. Angela Query's on the call. She might have that data to hand.
Hello, good afternoon, convener and elected members. Currently at the moment we have 270 people set to auto bid. I'll just get the figures for you to break down the bandings of them. 2 seconds. Just here.
Angie, I've got it here if you want it.
That would be great. Sorry, Claire, got everything open.
It's okay. Currently, people on the platinum banding, there is 8 applicants on auto bid. Gold high, 1 person's on auto bid. Gold medium, 22 people are on auto bid. Gold low, 27 people are on auto bid. Silver, 70 people are on auto bid. Bronze, 24 people are on auto bid. And non-priority, 120 people are on auto bid, so 272 altogether.
Okay, thanks everyone. So Councillor Scott and Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much.
On you go, Ronnie. We'll let you go first.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, convener. Just on page 231, appendix 3, I just want to give you a sort of comment and a question. First of all, it's really great to see that Armed Forces personnel still qualify and are kept in the platinum group, which is excellent. But I wonder if any of the officers could tell me what's the sort of take up you're getting for people coming out of the forces applying for social housing.
We don't have that figure to hand, Councillor Proctor, but we can certainly get that to you after the meeting.
No, that would be good, because it's one of the questions I get asked often day to day in my other activities, working in veterans charities, and I try and promote how Angus Council sort of tries to help veterans. So if I could get that, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
No problem at all.
I'd appreciate that getting maybe shared with the committee. I'd be quite interested in that too. Councillor Scott.
Thanks, convener. Actually, have spoken with several colleagues who would like to participate in this. I think, housing's such a huge thing for us, so actually for us all. So I think I would like to refer to full council, if that's okay.
Sorry, I'm just...
Sorry, convener, just in relation to Standing Order 36.2, a matter can only be referred to full council where there's been a vote taken place. So it would have to be a unanimous decision of this committee if you did want to defer this item to full council, or it may be that you wish to move the recommendations within the report, whereas then there would have to be an amendment moved.
Well, at this present time, I think we're still open we're on questions. We're not even on comments yet. So we'll get to Councillor Scott's query once we've finished with the questions and comments for the Communities Committee. So does anybody else have any questions on this report? No? Okay, we move to comments. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I think there's a couple of, there's a few common sense things here that I think will make sense to people who are waiting for housing. And one's on page 200, and that's about equal shared care of children, that there may well be a possibility of getting a larger house when the shared care is approved. And I think that makes an awful lot of sense, because we do have people who are in a pretty difficult situation at times. And the other one is on page 214, where there's limited stock and turnover, the house sizes you qualify for. It may well be that you can get a smaller house if you can prove that you have the required criteria there, because there are some people who are have been only allowed to go for a 4 or 5 bedroomed house, but there may be possibilities of a kind of flexibility, I think, and that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Any further comments? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I've said, I have huge reservations about this report, this ask, the history to this report, the fact that a lot of really important questions that I've posed to officers haven't been answered. I appreciate that, time and staff and resource to sometimes get those questions. I do acknowledge that can take time, but I have huge concerns that a lot of those questions still haven't been answered. There has been a lot of mistakes made along the way. There's been a lot of recommendations that came before the first initial implementation that haven't been listened to, adhered to, even feedback way back in the first consultations from the public and wider stakeholder group weren't taken on board. I feel that at this moment in time, I'd certainly be supporting Councillor Scott's ask that we refer this to full council. I think it's such a huge and important matter that all councillors should get the opportunity. I'd be minded to bring a recommendation to pause this works until we are able to do that. And you know, at very least, I think we need to be referring it to full council.
I would just like to seek guidance from our housing colleagues that there is a time issue potentially here with regards to the system change. Can you explain what the rationale is there? This is in the recommendations. My fear is that we're actually debating a different issue. You're debating, Councillor Speed, as I understand it, the principle of choice-based lettings and choice-based lettings itself, which this report is not that. This report is approving the common allocation policy that feeds into a different system. Now, that's what I've heard from what you've told me just now. So just to give us a second, I'm just going to ask the housing team for advice on the implications of a delay in this in terms of how it makes their systems work or not work, just so we can get a steer for when it comes to a potential vote.
So yeah, the current contract with Home Connections has come to an end, so we're not currently supported by Home Connections. They are still running the system for us, but we don't have any support from them. We need to change systems and we need to build a policy on the system that's going to be our policy for the next 3 to 4 years to make sure it's cost effective. As well as a risk has been noted in the report that we need to increase lets to people who are experiencing homelessness and take forward the other changes proposed in the revised policy. I think they're crucial to meeting the housing needs and addressing the issues and complaints that we're receiving from applicants. The system changes and the policy itself needs to be changed quickly so we can meet the needs of our applicants and address some of the system issues that we're experiencing.
As I understand standing orders, we've had 2 people indicate that they want this referred to full council. That means that we have to have a vote, and then after that vote, that reference can be made. Is that correct? As per the standing, would we like to have a recess just to get that clear? We'll take
sorry,
can we have a 5-minute recess? Do we agree to that? Come for a break.
I think you need John, can you stop the live stream, please?
Welcome back, everybody. So we've just had a small recess there to go over the standing orders to make sure we do this correctly. We've reached the end of that item. I just wanted to say, is there any further comments beyond that? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I just want to urge everybody to be really careful. There's no point in delaying things for the sake of delaying. We're talking about the amendments and improvements to the allocation policy here, and delaying it, as we've heard from the housing team, could in itself cause issues. So I think this committee is here to discuss these matters. It's not for full council to decide everything, and I think delaying it could cause more trouble than it's worth, frankly. Thank you.
So based on the actions in the debate, Councillor Scott has indicated that she would like this to be deferred to Angus Council. I am in the position to move the motion, seconded by Councillor Brace. Councillor Scott is moving the deferral, correct? Yeah. I guess Councillor Scott requires a seconder, or is it? Yeah, Councillor Speed. Councillor Speed seconding Councillor Scott's motion for a deferral to Angus Council, the next council meeting. I take it we just go to the vote.
Thanks, convener. So the motion to approve the report as it stands by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Brace, and the amendment is to defer the report to the full Angus Council by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Speed. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor Brace.
Motion.
Amendment.
Councillor Gregg.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Durno.
Motion.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl.
Amendment.
Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
And Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
Seven for the motion and 9 for the amendment. The amendment is carried.
Okay, thanks everyone. We move on then to the Montrose Basin and Ranger provision in Angus. This is going to be introduced by Alison. It's on page 198 of your... Oh, no, it's not. It is on page 198 of your papers.
Thank you. So this report provides an update on Montrose Basin and seeks agreement for an options appraisal to be undertaken for ongoing ranger provision across Angus. Following submission of the change request by Angus Alive, council officers have been working closely with them in relation to the transfer of activities at Montrose Basin. The wildfowling permits and wardening for this season is now being overseen and managed by Angus Council. Other functions related to Montrose Basin also include the ongoing management of the site, as it is listed as one of the key sites within the Countryside Adventure Ranger Service specification for Angus Alive. In discussing this element of the service provision, it was agreed that it was difficult to solely extract this element. Given Angus Alive is currently reviewing their long-term work in the context of budget pressures and the service specification is under review, it is recommended that work progresses to take a comprehensive look at this activity across the area to identify the main priorities, cost and delivery options. The scope of that appraisal and next steps will be reported back to this committee.
Okay, we open this up to any questions. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, convener. I think I'm just looking for clarification more than anything else. With regards to the service level agreement, is that not a way of saying how many staff are needed? And if that is the case, then is that not an operational matter and one that we, or certainly I, am forever told, no, we don't get involved in that?
So in terms of this, a service level agreement that we have, that sets out the ask of the Council of Angus Alive. So that sets out the broad scope of the activities to be delivered.
I think what you're saying in terms of the operational matters and how that is delivered sits within Angus Alive's domain to work that out, how, you know, what's needed within that. But it's for us to make sure that what we're asking for, you know, that those services, we are really sort of monitoring the delivery of the services as opposed to the specifics of how that is done, if that makes sense.
Just to come back then, so again, if we're telling Angus Alive what service we require, again, that ultimately is going to come down to staff, is it not? Which again is operational, again, is it not?
Can I just see, I'm not sure I understand your question, Councillor Gregg. Do you want to just sort of rephrase it? I'm not really getting it.
Yeah. So, having read this, it looks like it's yet another thing that's been handed back by Angus Alive because they either don't, well, they can't make any money out of it, so they just dump it back to the council. And within that is obviously the provision of a ranger to look after the bylaws, make sure that they're being adhered to, as well as all the other bits and bobs that are within this report. So a ranger is a member of staff, in my understanding, and therefore that requires, that's an operational matter. And if we're being asked to agree something that ultimately is an operational matter, should we be agreeing on that? You still look confused.
So for what we're proposing in the report is to undertake that options appraisal about the best way to deliver those services across, you know, sort of trying to take out one piece, which was the basin, was very difficult to do. So this is more about what is the scope of that, what's the best way to deliver those services across all the locations in Angus. So it's really just about agreement to take forward that options appraisal with Angus Alive to come back with those options. That's all we're seeking at this point.
Okay, any further questions on this one? No, any comments? Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. So, first of all, I am on the board of Angus Alive, and I would just caution against maybe the phrasing by Councillor Gregg, which sounded a little bit disrespectful in terms of dumping things back onto the council. But moving on from that, I just really wanted to toot the horn for Montrose Basin. It's an incredibly precious environment. It's highlighted in the report, the kind of birds that find it absolutely vital. Just in a bit more detail, a lot of those birds are having huge challenges at the minute. Bird flu has absolutely battered these species in the last few years. And for example, the redshank recent RSPB research shows there's been 53% loss of these birds on salt marshes. So this is a very, very unique and important environment right on our doorsteps. So from that perspective, it's incredibly important to me that it does retain its local nature reserve status. I would really hope that any assessment going forward and any options appraisal puts supporting and resourcing rangers right at the heart of it. Whoever's you know, backing or providing or sort of funding these rangers, I agree that that's absolutely crucial, because I've interacted with lots of rangers in Angus since I've moved here, and there has been a feeling that not always do they feel sufficiently supported. So I would just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. Any further comments? Nope. Oh, Councillor Speed.
Yeah, no, it was just really to say that I can understand Councillor Gregg's question and point of clarity that he was seeking around the operational, because I think as a council there does seem to be a kind of selective use of the word operational when it suits. So yeah, I appreciate and understand where his concerns were coming from.
Okay, any further comments? We move to the recommendations then. It's recommendations 1 to 4. It's to agree the importance of the... Oh, sorry, apologies. Councillor Proctor, you're hiding at the bottom of the screen. Councillor Proctor.
All right, I don't mind hiding. Commissioner, yeah, like Councillor Cowdery, I am a member of Angus Alive Council, member of Angus Alive, and I really do think that we should look at an appraisal to see what comes out best for a very, very important piece of Scotland and for our county. Montrose Basin is famed for its wildlife, and I think we're duty bound, forgetting whether it's operational or otherwise, but we are duty bound to look to see what the best option is available to promote and protect that valuable asset to Angus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. Recommendations 1 to 4. It's to agree the importance of the basin, note the wildfire permit scheme element, instruct officers to work with Angus Alive, and to note the report will be brought back to Communities Committee on the scope of options. So recommendations 1 to 4. Do we agree those recommendations? Right, okay, thanks everybody. We move on then to the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Strategy 24-28. It's agenda item 10 and it's on page 257. Graham Daly is going to introduce this report.
Thank you. This report provides members with an update on the Angus Council Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Strategy and notes the prior authorisation granted to officers to submit an application to the Scottish Futures Trust for the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund as outlined in this report. The report outlines the significant progress made so far and details our ambitious plans to substantially expand the public charging network in Angus, subject to securing the £725,000 funding from the Scottish Futures Trust. As was outlined in the report and as agreed by Policy and Resources Committee on 3rd September 2024, this application has been made. This report specifically seeks members' agreement to working collaboratively with Perth and Kinross Council to develop a private sector partnership delivery model, which we believe is the most cost-effective model for advancing the provision of electric vehicle infrastructure in Angus.
Thank you, Graham. And yeah, this report is welcome. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's a great initiative. I'd like to see, I mean, I've already previously mentioned about it. I think we've got a lot of EV charging points in Angus, and we seem to be doing really well on that. And so it would be good to continue that theme. However, when I've started to look into it a bit more, especially with page 2, looking at page 262, it's got the list of all the publicly owned and maintained charging points. The maximum capacity that we have is 50 kilowatts. I think a big stumbling block with trying to get people to buy electric cars is their fear of, well, one is range and two is how long it takes to charge them. And looking at the charging things that we've got, I mean, just a quick look on Auto Trader, for example, a Tesla, trying to recharge that on a 22 kilowatt thing would take 8 hours to charge that, which is, I would say, slow. And even on their highest one at 50 kilowatts, it's going to take well over an hour to get that anywhere close to. So are we going to be looking to just have 50 as a maximum? Are we going to be looking to like some of the ultra rapid chargers? Like, for example, in a BP garage in Dundee, they've got one that's 360 kilowatts. Obviously, to try and persuade and help the public along into buying these electric cars, we want to be doing our bit, and if we can help them by offering super fast and like really fast charging, then that's going to help that as well. Plus, as well, I feel that the whole electric car thing, it moves at such a pace that some of this technology is, as soon as it's brought out, it goes very quickly out of date. So to try and keep at the front of that, I'm hoping that you're going to say, yes, we are going to have more than just 50 kilowatts, even if we got to 150, but some ultra rapid ones like the ones they've got in Dundee at 360, I think that would be quite positive too.
Before you come in, Graham, can I respond slightly? I've got an electric car. You're not charging up to 100% on a fast charger. You're going from like 20 to 80. That's your target. And I've got an 18-plate BMW i3S. It's not top of the range anything, right? Relatively cheap when it comes to electric cars. And that charging time from 20 to 80% is not big at all. It's about half an hour max. If you're going to charge up to full on a fast charger, a 50 kilowatt charger, you'd be looking at maybe about an hour in a car park at that, which isn't crazy. The key thing for us, in my opinion, to look out for, and before I bring in Scott and Graham, is the proposal of the 60 22 kilowatt hour chargers is huge, because we're looking at on-street locations. And the idea and the potential behind that is to give people that don't have driveways the capacity to charge their car in a way that they can't do at the moment. So if you've got a home charger, you're putting it on when you get in, it'll charge at the cheapest time and it'll fill it up to that 20 to 80 range, no bother. This proposal is like bringing forward that opportunity to people that can't get home chargers now and giving them an option. And one of the things that I've specifically mentioned to Graham about us looking at is our time restrictions on those fast chargers, because we need to lift them in order for people to maximise the potential usage, but that's for another day. At the moment, this paper is, in my opinion, really exciting, and I guess so I'm not a hypocrite, I have to fashion that into a question too. Is that something that we're looking at, Graham and Scott, as our options for what we're bringing forward for this? Also, not to be missed is working with the private sector and what they say. So there could, I would imagine, be an opportunity to look at faster. But as it stands right now, to me, 50 kilowatt and 22 kilowatt is a really good starting point for a basis of having a really good network in Angus.
I'll come in first, and as you mentioned, I'm joined by Scott Dryden, who's, in terms of the technical knowledge on these things, is best placed to answer. But in terms of the principle, I think just a couple of things I would highlight. The report we're bringing forward is just to agree the model in terms of collaborating with our neighbouring council and going down the partnership with the private sector as the most effective way. We'll have presented as context and to update members in terms of the bigger picture, what we're endeavouring to do in terms of bigger strategy. I would say in terms of the principle, firstly in terms of making sure we are aligned with technology, I think that's very much what we will endeavour to do. Now, we know technology moves quickly, and what we put in place perhaps in 20 years is probably unlikely to be, remain cutting edge. It's the nature of things. But I think the principle of what Councillor Gregg was saying is that in terms of the charge infrastructure that is available, just to ensure we are delivering, to capacity. And I'll maybe ask Scott to come in, because I think in terms of what is available at each site, there are restrictions. So the rapid fast chargers might not necessarily be there. As the convener said, the convener has raised with me and had quite detailed conversations about really the points that he's put there, and being at pains to say about making sure we get the right locations. And again, what we're presenting today isn't as explicit as saying where exactly we will put these points, but it is definitely, we will take cognizance of the requirement to put these in locations, whether it's on street, residential areas that are best suited. It is a challenge because, again, we're restricted in terms of, tapping into obviously an electrical supply, what's there. But I would just maybe give you some reassurance that we're listening to these points and we will endeavour to do it. However, we are limited by the technical capacity. Now, I'll let my colleague Scott Dryden, as I said, who's been involved in this and very much has more knowledge on the technical side. Scott, would you like to add anything further on that?
I think you've covered it pretty well, Graham. But what I would say is, this is very much just the start as we move forward. It's a very fast-moving sector, and although the report says 22 and 50 kilowatt for this first almost phase, we will in the future be looking at the larger chargers, as you're referring to, Councillor Gregg. But and in terms of sites, the sites will be identified at a later date. The sites itself will obviously, there'll be a lot of different things to consider: electricity supplies, ease of access, and the footprint of how many people that will effectively utilise these areas. So there's a lot of moving parts, but the locations, for example, that's something that will be considered at a later date. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Comments? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. Oh, Councillor Proctor with your sneaky last minute hands. Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, just a very, very quick question probably for Scott Dryden. Maintenance of these, these newly installed systems, are we going to be able to maintain whatever we put in? Because I know we had a problem with Creemuir, one of them in the Belly's Brain. It took some time to repair. So what's the sort of, how the maintenance programme to keep them going is going to work?
Okay, thanks for your query, Councillor Proctor. Yes, that'll be built into the contract. There'll be a maintenance agreement built into the contract when this, should we get approval from Transport Scotland. So that'll all be covered, whether it'll be a 5-year programme or a 10-year programme, that'll all be covered. The issue with Belly's Brae car park, I think there was a delay with parts on that part, so apologies for the delay on that one, but that's where we are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Right, we'll move to the recommendations. Oh, Councillor Brace, very quickly, please.
Yeah, very quickly. Yes, this is a moving feast. It's a moving target. You know, I think we're sitting at 3% battery cars at the moment, and if the aim's to get up to 100%, the change in the infrastructure is going to be massive, and things are moving really quickly. You know, we think of going up and getting a cable and sticking it into our car to charge it up. Well, that's kind of already getting out of date. Wireless charging seems to be the way forward. It's already happening in cities. So it's really quite difficult to predict how quickly we're going to get to wherever it is we are going with the technology. Thanks.
Well, where we're going now is the recommendations. So it's recommendations 1 to 3. It's getting late. Note the progress the Angus Council's made. Agree the officers continue to work collaboratively with Perth and Kinross, and note the application of Transport Scotland. Are we happy to recommend those? Happy to approve those recommendations? Great stuff. Okay, thanks everybody. We now move on then to number 11, which is the Winter Roads Services Policy Plan for 24-25. So on page 272 of our papers, Graham is going to introduce.
Thank you, Convener. This report sets out the proposed Winter Road Services Policy and details the proposed service provision for preventative treatment and snow clearing during the winter period 24-25, together with contingency arrangements to cater for extreme conditions prevailing, in conjunction with the operational issues detailed in the Winter Road Services Plan for 24-25. I would advise members that the policy and procedures presented in the report are aligned with the previous years and there are no significant changes. And I am joined by our Roads Assets Manager, Pete Morton, who is also available if there's any questions on the contents of our policy.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Clark.
If I may, I'm not asking a question on behalf of Councillor Shepherd, which I've made sure that I did all that he wanted, but I'd like a question for myself, if you don't mind. Hi, Graham and
Hi.
Peter. On page 273, 3.14, I read with great interest and absolutely I've seen it happening. The Council will encourage the use of self-help measures, including community-led provision of some local winter road services. And that, to my mind, means in some cases anyway, we've had this conversation, you and I, yellow boxes at the end of people's streets, etc., which are replenished as needed with some grit to keep pavements and pavements cleared. So that's commendable, and I'm really pleased to see that that's policy driven. But I would just really encourage again to make sure that those are refilled, because it makes a big difference when people can do that, and it's great to be encouraging them to do so. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Trying to budget for how much salt we're going to need for each winter is obviously incredibly difficult. Some years you might use 1,000 tonnes, other years you might use half of that. And obviously there's the budgetary pressures attached to that. It's mentioned in page 276, so 3.132, about taking a slightly different approach with the budgetary parts of it. If there's a budgetary underspend within the roads department, specifically for things like salt, can that be carried forward to the next year, so that if, for example, then there's a lot more required, then rather than it going over budget, they've got a little, pardon the pun, slush fund available to draw from, rather than it becoming an increasingly budgetary pressure? Are there ways to do that, or is that something that's been done before that we could perhaps relook at?
Yeah, through you, Convener, that's a question that our finance colleagues are probably best placed, but I know from experience that this, if we have an underspend in our revenue, that is not carried forward to the next year, and really we need to comply with our financial regs and procedures on this. What we can do is we could submit a request to carry forward revenue budget under certain criteria and circumstances. I would say, though, from experience, that we wouldn't submit such a request if it was just purely as a result, or just the proposal was to have, to use your term, Councillor Gregg, a slush fund. That wouldn't be something that we would require to do. And we do operate on the basis that we know it's unpredictable and that there does carry a risk depending on the weather that we may have an over or underspend on this. So yes, to answer your question directly, it's not, in terms of our accountancy procedures, that is not something that we would propose to do, and we just do proceed on the basis that we understand that from a financial perspective, we just manage the risk that, you know, we may be over or under spent. It's something that isn't new, and we obviously have had many years of experience in terms of managing that.
Okay, Councillor Dunno.
Yeah, just to add that Tayside Contracts get in all the salt, and it's already bought in for this year. And I think Ross is actually on Tayside Contracts Committee, so he could actually speak to Keith himself if he wants to know some more about salt and spend, etc., because they speak about it quite a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dunno. Any other questions? Move on to comments. No comments. We move on to the recommendations then. 272, I'll get back to that. Okay, the recommendations are to note the service delivery, approve the winter road services policy, approve the updates, note the arrangements again, and delegate the authority to the manager. That's recommendations 1 to 5. Are we happy to approve those recommendations? Okay, on to the final agenda item, which is agenda item 12, the B962 Panmure Street, Monteith, amendments to existing speed limits. It's on page 286. It's going to be introduced by Graham.
Thank you. This report informs the committee of concerns raised over speeding on the B962, which is Panmure Street, on the southbound approach into Monteith, and requests to reduce the speed limit, and details the findings of the engineering investigations that have been carried out in order to make the recommendations to committee.
Thanks, Graham. Do we have any comments? Or, sorry, we'll open up to questions first. Any questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. Just a quick one. But I fully support this. I'm presuming it's going from a 60 to 40 and then down to whatever the speed limit is in Monteith. Is it just the signs that are going up, or are there going to be markings on the road that sort of are there to sort of help make it more aware of people's speed rather than just to having a couple of signs up?
Can I please refer this one to Andy Barnes, who's on the call?
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, so the report's only dealing with the speed limit. I think, as you've mentioned before, Councillor Gregg, the other detail is maybe operational, where that is certainly something that we can look at as part of the proposal, yes.
Okay, and any further questions? Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. I fully support this. The only question I have, how is it going to be sort of monitored and policed? You know, when we've got 20-mile-an-hour sounds, and then sometimes we have a difficulty making sure that people abide by them. Is any thought being given into that?
Again, I'll invite Andy to come in to answer that one first of all, at least.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Councillor Proctor. Yes, obviously, enforcement of the speed limit is an issue for Police Scotland, and wherever you change speed limits, there'll be an enforcement requirement. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. Well, I just hope they do manage to do it better than what they've done in other places. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on. Any other questions? Right, move to comments. Councillor Melville.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I'm personally delighted to see this item included in the agenda. I've had extensive discussion with constituents, engagement with the roads team and with Police Scotland about this matter over many months. I believe this is the right thing to do. Having a 60 miles per hour zone go straight into a 30 mile per hour zone, as currently is not in keeping with practice elsewhere in Angus. It does result in vehicles entering Monteith at higher speeds, and it presents a risk to pedestrian safety. Those of you who know the area well will know that there are lots of elderly residents and also families with young children living at this end of Panmure Street. I was able to organise and attend speed monitoring with Police Scotland here in August, and a number of vehicles were stopped because of their speeds coming into Monifieth. So I'm asking committee to join with me in supporting this proposal today to reduce the speed of incoming traffic and to improve the safety of this part of Monifieth. And finally, convener, can I thank you, our roads officers, Police Scotland, and above all my constituents for their constructive engagement about this over many months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Melville. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, convener. Yes, I'll quite happily join with Councillor Melville in joining this. It makes sense. It's there to try and slow people down in preparation for coming into 30. I would, however, like to perhaps see a difference, and perhaps this is because we know the council likes trialling things, to see by having the painted markings on the ground to make it more representative, like they do when you're coming off of a dual carriageway motorway onto a smaller road. There are the physical markings on the road that give you a visual impact as to your speed. Whether that makes a bigger difference in the adherence to the speed limit they're coming up to, whether that be a 30 or a 20 or otherwise. So I'd quite like to see some data around that and see if that's a possibility.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. I'd just like to add my support as fellow ward councillor for this. I welcome this report. I think it's a good move, and I urge all of the colleagues on this committee to support.
Okay, we're ready to move to recommendations. Yep. Ronnie? Yep. Okay. Recommendations are 1 to 3. We're noting the concerns of locals, noting the findings of the engineering investigations, and agreeing the implementation of the amendments. Are we happy to approve those recommendations? Thank you very much, everybody.
John, can you stop the light?